A group of 10 snails find a pond. These snails decide to live in this pond and want to know how long they can remain in the pond before they outgrow their environment. Fortunately, these are very scientifically minded snails, so they create this formula to find the number of expected new snails per week based on an estimated carrying capacity and a growth rate, each represented by K and R respectively in the equation. The snails estimate, based on resources and size, that their pond has a carrying capacity of 1,000 snails. First, they see how fast their population will grow with a growth rate of 20%. Here is the formula with the growth rate and carrying capacity filled in. The first week, they can expect to gain 2 snails. Charting out this growth rate per year, they create this scatter plot of the number of new snails they will gain each week. The total number of new snails peaks around week 26 and then decreases through the rest of the year. This chart shows their expected total population each week over the course of a year. As you can see, it makes sense that the number of new snails decreased around week 26 since this is when the total population reaches halfway to the carrying capacity. This forms a logistic graph that slows down and tapers off as the population reaches the carrying capacity. Next, the snails check the speed of their population change at a growth rate of 50%. Since this is a larger growth rate, it takes a smaller number of weeks to reach the maximum number of new snails per week. Week 12 has the most new snails introduced to the population, and by week 24, no new snails can be added to the pond. The total population graph for a growth rate of 50% looks very similar to the same chart for a 20% growth rate, but it reaches the carrying capacity much more quickly. This trend continues. As the growth rate increases, the number of weeks it takes to reach the maximum number of new snails decreases, as does the number of weeks it takes for the snails to reach the carrying capacity. At a 150% growth rate, it takes 7 weeks to reach the maximum number of new snails, and it takes 8 weeks for the new total population to reach the carrying capacity. At 150%, the snails actually exceed the carrying capacity by 2, if you assume no decrease in the snail population. At a 250% growth rate, it only takes 5 weeks to reach the maximum number of new snails, and the total population actually reaches 1,044 snails by week 6, exceeding the carrying capacity. If the snails increase at a rate of 350%, they will reach the maximum number of new snails by week 5, and will massively overshoot their carrying capacity by week 6, with a new total population of 1,413 snails. The snails decide to be more generous with their estimate of their pond's carrying capacity and dramatically increase their approximation from 1,000 to 1 trillion. They then chart out their expected population increase over a year to see how long it will take them to fill the pond at a growth rate of 20%. This graph for the number of new snails shows that the snails do not meet the carrying capacity and the growth rate does not decrease over the course of just 1 year. Since the carrying capacity is so much larger than the initial population value of 10 snails, this graph shows an exponential growth rate for the snails. By the end of the first year, the total snail population will only have reached 109,205 snails out of the total carrying capacity of 1 trillion. This means that the snails will only have filled about 0.00019% of the pond. It may seem like the snails could live in this pond forever at this growth rate, but the snails will actually reach the carrying capacity in 267 weeks, or just over 5 years. So far, the snails have been assuming in their calculations that they will only gain new snails and not lose any existing snails. If they remove this restriction and allow for a negative value of new snails per week, the charts become more erratic as the growth rate increases. The snails decide to check if increasing the initial number of snails by inviting others to join them would help stabilize the population as it increases at the larger growth rates. These charts show their estimates for the new snails per week and the total population of the pond when a larger initial population is used. As you can see, starting with a larger initial number of snails does not appear to help stabilize the snail population as their population expands at a higher growth rate.
Created using Powtoon.